It's funny you should mention that, because I want to talk to you about a particular scientist who does some philosophy of science in his book, and I have heard you say there are few things more simple than Richard Dawkins' God delusion.
Yeah, no, as I said, makes me ashamed to be an atheist, I think was the phrase I used.
What do you mean by that? In what way is it simple or simplistic?
Well, I think it's not simple, it's simplistic. I mean, there's nothing wrong with KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I mean, one of the virtues of science is simplicity. The trouble with Dawkins, I mean, you know, maybe this is envy. The guy sold 3 million copies of the book. I wish I'd sold 3 million copies of one of my books. I mean, the trouble is, he just doesn't take the things that he's talking about seriously. Now, I defer to nobody in my admiration for Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene, which he published 30 years ago, about the nature of genetics. Now, I don't care whether you agree with the book or not, but it seems to me that that is a serious attempt to understand aspects of the nature of biology. Now, if somebody comes along, and a woman called Mary Midgley did just this, and comes in and says, oh, well, that must be stupid because genes can't be selfish. I think Dawkins has got every right at this point to say, hang on a minute, I know that. I'm using a metaphor. Look at what I'm trying to do with this metaphor and see. Now, you may disagree with what I'm trying to do, but at least try to understand what's going on. I think Dawkins has a perfectly legitimate case there. Now, I want to say equally that I think the theologian or the religious person or the philosopher, and to a certain extent this is a turf war, I think that they have equal right to turn to Dawkins and say, look, if you're going to criticize this stuff, fair enough, but try to make an effort to understand what the position is. Now, I think a classic case would be Dawkins going after the cosmological argument, the causal argument. The causal argument, you know, everything has a cause, the world is a thing, therefore the world must have a cause, call it God. Okay? You know, philosophy on 100, undergraduate response, what caused God? You know, we've all done it. We've all been there. And, you know, I mean, it's a good question, but, you know, it's not the end of the argument. Dawkins then triumphantly says, there you are, bad argument, let's move on.
Well, he in fact thinks he has found a new argument that disproves God to a high probability.
Right. Push with the cosmological argument for a moment. You know, and I know, that Christians, St. Augustine, certainly St. Thomas, spent a hell of a lot of, I mean, they knew this. And so what they were trying to do was articulate a notion of God who would be first cause. You know, the whole notion of aseity, God as a necessary being, God a se, you know, God's essence is, you know, is his existence. Now, if Dawkins wants to say, as David Hume would say, that the whole notion of necessary being doesn't work or something like that, then let's talk about that, let's argue that. I mean, I'm inclined to think it might be right. But at least let's, you know, have the honesty, or not the honesty, the intellectual integrity to look at these things and look at the responses that the Christian philosophers, let's say just the Christian philosophers, have made. You may want to rough them up afterwards, but it's like selfish genes. At least do your homework. Now, the trouble with Dawkins is, I think, that he doesn't get to that point.